Hey, this is Carrie Canary Quilts, and we are on week 40 of the Dear Jane Quilt Along. We have made so much progress. It is absolutely amazing every time I come in here and look at this quilt here that I've colored in, my photo quilt. We have one more side border to do, the left side, and then we will work on the corners and putting all the sashing on, the cornerstones, and the borders or the sides to the border blocks here, these triangles. I mean, there's still a lot of work to do, but oh my gosh. It doesn't matter how far along you are, you should be patting yourself on the back. This is just absolutely amazing. So if you're new here, hit the subscribe button, notification bell. I have a playlist for all my Dear Jane videos in the description down below this video. If you want to share your blocks on social media with hashtag Dear Jane QAL and tag Canary Quilts, I will share them on my social media also, because I love to show everybody the beautiful blocks that are being made, and everybody loves to see the beautiful blocks that are being made. All right, this week we don't have a real hard week where there's no modifications. I don't think I'm using any variations. And we have a little bit of applique, so it's not going to be too hard. But let me populate my color quilt here. Like I do every week, we have B10 Judd's Trophy. And that has 3 colors in it, which is unusual. Most of these are 2 color. D6 Challenge, which I don't think will be much of a challenge. E2 Mary May, that's got some applique in it. E12 Mary Ruth's Corset. E12. And E12, we've done this before. Something very similar to this before. Then LS1, left side 1, Nancee's Fantasy. Yeah, Nancee's Fantasy. Goes up here, and I have to rotate. And there we go. So Nancee's Fantasy will probably be a lot of pieces to put together, but there is no modifications we need to make to it. All right, let's take a look at these blocks real quick before we start putting them together. All right, I know I said no modifications in the beginning. Well, I've started working on these blocks, and on this very first block, I found out that I just didn't notice the way this is put together. There's going to be Y seams in at least 3 of these corners. I don't want to do that many Y seams. I've already tried, and I'm like, I'm not doing it. This is an easy fix, and I want to show you how to do it if you're working in EQ8. Let's go back to draw, and let's draw a line here, and then delete this line, and then draw a line down here and delete this line. That helps us avoid a whole bunch of Y seams. So when you look at the foundation, it's going to print out where we put these together and we put these together. That's not what I'm going to have, but that's what you'll have, and it'll be a whole lot easier. So there you go. Future Carrie has already tried this and wasn't very successful, so I'm coming back here to show you how to change it up. All right, there we go. We can print that out, and it's going to be so much easier. Next block is D6 Challenge, and this is all one foundation. So we're just going to be working from the center out to each corner, it looks like. All right, so the next block is E2 Mary May, and these 2 pieces in the middle, when you look at the draw, are applique. So we need to do our foundation. If that's how you're going to do it, you don't have to do it that way. You can also do rotary cutting. Foundation is just 3 rows, and then we need to also go over to templates and print our templates. And we only need these petals right here. That's all we need. So you can delete these before you print them out. And that brings both petals over here. All right. That one's going to be easy. E12 is Mary's Corset, and I think we did a block recently just like this where we had the flying geese here on the outside. Anyway, let's see. Foundation is, yeah, we did. I modified a block to look like this. So just need to do these sections in here and put them together as a row and then add the outer two. So yeah, we are getting a break this week. And the last block is left side one, Nancee's Fantasy. You can see there's a lot of pieces here. If we do the foundation, you know, we got the top and then this section here. Yeah, this isn't going to be too hard. There's just going to be a lot of sections to put together, but it's not going to be too hard to do. All right, there we go. There's our blocks. So we can move on to constructing these blocks now. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do them. And remember to hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and share your blocks on social media with hashtag Dear Jane Quilt Along. So let's get to making our blocks. To start off week 40, we are working on B10 Judd's Trophy. And there is a lot of sections here, but they're pretty easy sections. This is what it's going to look like. It is a 3-color block, and my light colors is where her dark green is, and my blue is where her brown is. My pieces, which I do a cheat sheet for cut pieces, and I have it on my website. You can find that link down below if you want to use my cut pieces. So on my cheat sheet, I put color 1, color 2, and then next to mine, I put green and blue so I knew which colors to cut out. So let's put together one of these little pieces. The rest of these are just 3 pieces in a row, and the same thing here also. So let's just put together one of these corner pieces and I'll show you what the rest of mine look like. I have finished some of these pieces. These are just straight across, follow the numbers. This piece right here is going to be like the piece that I demonstrate, and then the same here. They're just straight lines. And then all of these are singular pieces that I have just attached my fabric to the paper piece. So we got a lot of those. There's the blue ones. All right, so get started on this one. I have drawn, I've drawn my numbers on the back. So I'm going to start with this middle piece. It doesn't say that here. You can start over there also. It doesn't matter. It's so small I can't handle it. So my middle piece is going to be a green. I'm going to lay it down so it's at least 1/4 inch over my number 2, and it covers pretty much the rest of the paper. And then my number 2 piece is a white triangle that's going to be oriented like that. So I'm going to pull it over, line it up with my green, because my green is past my seam allowance, which is right there. Phew, okay, I'm going to take this tiny little thing over to my machine, and I'm going to sew right here. I'm going to lock stitch at these points just to keep my threads from not coming out and moving my piece around. There's my first 2 pieces. So another reason for starting in the middle is all our white pieces will be ironed away from the middle piece. So if you want to have that look also, that's another reason to start in the middle here. So our third piece is the top triangle. So we can now trim for that. Take another triangle. It's going to be oriented like that. So I'm just going to flip it over. And it's plenty big, but here's my point of my seam allowance. So I am going to now sew right here, and I'm still going to lock stitch at these intersections. There's my first 3 pieces. And now we're going to flip it over. We're going to trim for the 4th tiny little triangle. And this triangle needs to be oriented like this. So I'm going to flip it over, line it up with my green corner down here, and sew on the line right here. I'm still going to lock stitch these points, And then I'm going to get everything trimmed up and we'll put this block together. A lot of pieces. These 3 small pieces need to go together like this to form a square. So I'm going to put these 3 pieces together. They should match up with notches. Yep, the notches go together right here. And I think I'll iron these open. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. There's my tiny little square. So now I'm taking my little individual triangles and I'm going to add them to that square to make a bigger square. So I'm just going to, yep, the notches on the edge line up right here. So I'm going to sew along the line. I'm going to iron towards these triangles. So what I think I'll do is put 2 on at a time over at my machine and then iron them and then come back and put these 2 on. There's my center square. So now we can put on our 2 individual pieces onto each end of our square. I'm going to iron towards my blue pieces, even though these are ironed towards the white. I just think it will be better than ironing towards that point. So I'm going to put these 2 pieces on, iron towards my blue pieces. Then I'm going to add these on and line up my seams right there. And then I'm going to iron towards these outer pieces. We're to the outer pieces. I am not using my paper pieces because I found out that there's Y seams and I tried them and I just was not successful at them. So I went back to the intro and I showed you how to make it so there's no Y seams. And it would be so much easier if you would do that. But if you are to the same point that I am, I just measured this edge, cut a 1-inch wide piece, this length. And then I know that these are ultimately going to be 5 inches. And so I cut 1 inch by 5 inch for these and I'm going to put them on and I'll have my outside borders on. So there you go. That's how I did it. I was having a hard time with those Y seams, didn't want to do it. So in the beginning, I showed you how to not do Y seams, but if you're here, this is how I got my borders on. There we go. Got it done. Hopefully you had an easier time where you were putting this entire section here onto your block. So, and then you just have to put on these 2 pieces. That's how I should have noticed it in the first place, but I got stuck trying to figure out Y seams, didn't like it, and got to the point where I had to recut some pieces. So there you go. I did complete it, and I hope you did too. B10 Judd's Trophy. Next block is D6 Challenge. This is what it's going to look like. This is what mine's going to look like. I have one big center piece, which is my number 1 piece in here. These are my white stripes and these are my corners. So these corners do not cross. So I think what I'm going to do is put my big piece on and then cut all 4 corners and put my white piece on all 4 sides, trim all 4 sides, corners, and then put this on. So I'll show you that here. Let me get set up for that. I'll show you. All right, I've got this cut out. I'm not going to draw out my lines because I really don't need to the way I'm going to do it. I made a plenty big piece here, so I'm going to go over to my machine. I've already tried it here. I'm going to tack it down in 4 spots all around my block. My paper is tacked down onto my fabric. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go around to all my corners, and where the white piece meets that center, I'm going to trim it. And to be honest, it looks like what I'm cutting off may work in the corner. So I'll let you know. All right, now I'm going to take my white strips and I'm going to do all 4 of them at the same time. I'm going to line them up. I'm going to go over to my machine and sew on this line right here. I'm going to repeat for all 4 of these over at my machine. There's my white strips. Now we can go ahead and trim for our triangles, and it looks like the corners that I cut off will work. So you just need to cut that big piece and then reuse the corners that you cut off. All right, I'm gonna get all 4 of these trimmed and get my triangle sewn on, and you trim around the edge and the block will be done. Yeah, there we go. D6 challenge. So that was pretty easy. And I was able to reuse these corners. I did in my sheet, I'm going to put an alternate if you don't want to cut the corners off and use them, if you're not comfortable, how you can cut corners here. Cut the corners here, not cut corners. Anyway, there we go, D6 challenge. It's pretty. Next block is E2 Mary May. This is what it's gonna look like. That center is going to be applique. And there's my 2 applique templates that I did, and I transferred them over to my dark fabric on some fusible webbing. I've got my large white center, and then my 4 corners are white squares, and then my rectangles around here I've got cut. So I want to make a note here. I don't know why EQ8 did this, but in my EQ8 at least, it made this C1 and this one C2 and this one C3, and that just makes no sense. So I'm leaving this as C1. I'm changing the big one to C2, and this one's C3. If yours does that, you'll need to make a change because there's no way you could put it together that way. All right. Oh my gosh, this should be easy. You know, you're putting a row together. I'm not going to show these because I think at this point we all know how to do that. You know, you follow your numbers and put them together. So I'm going to get this assembled and then we'll put our applique on. There's my block completed. I've got my appliques pieces cut out, and I'm just going to point each of them at a corner, kind of center them. Like that. So I'm just going to get these tacked down and ironed on. There we go, Mary May. I didn't show making the background. You could have cut rotary pieces for that also. It's pretty easy to put together. All right, up next is E12 Mary Ruth's corset. This is what it's going to look like. And I've got my pieces cut. What I have here, I do have my pieces on my website, and the link is in the description down below if you want to use my cut pieces. I have got these large white triangles are inside the flying geese. These squares, these bigger squares, are on the corners, and then these little squares I'm using in here instead of triangles. All right, so these large blue rectangles are in the next to the flying geese. The large blue triangles are the corners of the flying geese. The small squares are these 2 squares, and the small triangles are these 2 triangles. All right, so we've put together several of these. I'll put together one of these little ones, and we can put together one of these here. Real quick, I said these squares were going to be used for these. Actually, I had written in my instructions, my cut pieces, to cut these on the diagonal. I didn't do it, so that's what I'm going to do. If you go by my cut pieces, it'll say to do that. Okay, here's the pieces I already did. They went together really nice. So here's the little ones like we're going to do here. And then these are the little ones that have just 2 pieces. Whoops. All right. So let's start with the little one. I've marked my seams and my numbers on the back. So our number 1 is a white triangle. So it needs to be oriented like this. So I'm going to lay it 1/4 of an inch over number 2. Here's my seam allowance. I'm going to take my blue square, which is next, line it up with the corner of my white piece. Take it over to my machine and sew right here. And since it's so small, I'm going to lock stitch at those corners. There you go. There's my first 2 pieces. Now we can put on our third little tiny triangle after we trim it up. All right, my triangle needs to be oriented like that. So I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to line it up here. There's my seam allowance. So I'm just going to put it just a little bit over my seam allowance. And then sew on the line right here, lock stitching at these 2 points. There we go. There's our little tiny piece done. All right, for this one, I've got it drawn out on the back. Our first piece is a dark triangle, so I'm going to turn it over. It needs to be oriented like this. My seam allowance is there and there, and I'm 1/4 of an inch over the line for number 2. So number 2 has to be oriented like this. So I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to make sure that it's at least 1/4 of an inch past number 3 here. And we're plenty past that seam allowance. So now we can sew on the line between F1 and F2. And I'm going to lock stitch at both these points. There we go. First 2 pieces. Third piece is the other corner of our flying goose. Get it trimmed up. Our blue corner needs to be oriented like that, so I'm going to turn it over, and my corner is right here and I'm lined up. So I'm going to get this sewn on, lock stitching at both points. Okay, there's my flying goose. Let's trim up to add our bottom piece here. There we go. And that's where I'm going to put this large rectangle. So there's my seam allowances. So I have plenty of space. I'm going to sew on the line below my flying goose, and I'm going to get all my pieces trimmed up. I got my pieces all trimmed up. So we want to make sure our flying geese are on the outside of our block, and we want it pointing to the outside of our block. The inside of our block, we want our smaller 2-piece sections on the top right and the bottom left. And then our 3-piece sections are in the middle, and you want to line them up so that the white and dark line up right here. Same thing up here, white and dark line up, white and dark line up. And that's where we want to put them together on that seam. So it looks like these notches line up perfectly, and I'm going to sew right here on this seam. I think I'll iron them open for now. I actually put the bottom one on too, just like the top one here. So now we want these pieces to go on right there at that seam. And the notches work out there too, right there and right there. So I'm going to sew along here and iron open. There's our center section, and what I need to do is this. Points pointing out. So now we're just going to put our rows together. I'm going to put this row together. I'm going to iron towards the outer pieces, and then I'm going to add these on and iron towards these outer sections. There we go, E12, Mary Ruth's Corset. I like the middle of that one. That's cool. And I like how it forms this white square also around it. Last block this week is LS1, left side, Nancee's Fantasy. And this is what Dear Jane's looks like. These are our sections for foundation paper piece. I have a lot of pieces over here, and I need my cheat sheet to figure out where they go. You can find my cut pieces on my website, and I have the link in the description down below this video. You can head over there and grab my cut pieces. I use them. If I need to modify them, I'll make modifications before I post them up there. We have a lot of different sections here, but a lot of these sections, like these here, are just 2 pieces. This is 3 pieces. What I may do is some of these I may show you how I start them, but I won't finish them because starting is sometimes the hardest. This one is just going from top to bottom. This might be a fairly difficult one, so maybe I'll do this one and show you how I start some of these other ones. I've got all these sections out for a reason, and that's because they're all going to get started in this same way. What I've done is I've taken the first piece and I've tacked it down. So like this first piece on here is this big purple. The first piece on this one is this big white piece. And this is just the mirror image of it. And also here, I've got my first rectangle set up. The second piece I've got here, these are my second pieces and these are my second pieces here. So what I want to do on all of these is before I start, I want to trim that first piece up so I can put my second piece on instead of trying to somehow line it up. I'm just going to trim it like that. So now I'm ready to add this piece on just like that. I'm going to do the same thing for this one. For this one down here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to trim up for my second piece. And now I'm ready to add my rectangle. Get that sewn up. And then over here on these, I want to, let's see, I need to do it this way. I need to trim this one so I can add my square. And I do have squares for this. So I'm just going to take my square and put it there. And now I'm ready to sew here. And the same thing for the mirror image over here. So that's how I'm starting all of these pieces, just so you know. It is a little bit different. You're just not putting 2 pieces together. You actually have to trim the first piece so you can put the second piece on. Here's the 3 of the sections that I started. These were just 2 pieces. Those were easy. So this one, remember I showed you how to start it here. Well, we have to kind of do the same thing over for the 3rd piece. And I did one to make sure that I did it correctly. This is how I do it. Other people may do it differently. Here is my seam allowance. That's where I need to get out to with this piece. So we can't line it up like this, because then we're going like that. You can't line it up like this. You probably could. It'd be awful close. But what I do is I just make a I just make this rectangle. I'm going to lay it down on top of the piece on the right sides. I'm past my seam allowance here. And I can see where my 1/4 inch is down there. So I am going to, with my 1/4 inch, add a 1/4. I'm just going to put it right on that seam. Like that. And draw a line. Okay, so let's just cut it. Whoops, I don't want to throw my pen away. This is what I did. This is how I lined it up. I'm going to line it up where I guess where I cut it down here with this point. So if we just do a test, you can see that it fits. And if I just bring it down a little more, let's try lining it up with our point up here. Okay, that works. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this point right here with that point right there. Like that, and then I'm going to go over and I'm going to sew right here on this line. And then it'll flip in the correct direction. There we go. That's what it's going to look like when I get it ironed. And it's past my lines over there. All right, so that's how you do these pieces right here. The sections F and H. I have finished up my top piece there. That was pretty easy. And I've attached all my single pieces to their paper pieces. What I have left is this piece, and it's going to be very similar to these pieces that I showed you. We're starting in the middle here with number 1, and then moving across with 2 is the dark triangle, and then 3 on the other side. So what I need to do, I marked them on this side, is I need to put my number 1 down. It's plenty big, and trim it so that I can put my number 2 down. I am going to tack this in place. Okay, I've got it tacked down so it doesn't move on me. So I want to trim first. All right. Now I'm going to put my square down. That's plenty big. You can see that it just needs to hit here and here. So I'm going to sew right here on B2, lock stitching at these 2 ends. There we go. Now we need to trim for 3. And this one's shorter than the other one, so we might be able to take this one and just lay it like that. Let's test it out. Oh yeah, that'll work. So we don't have to do any weird trimming for this one. I'm just going to center it here on my blue and then sew on the line right here and unlock stitching at each point. All right, that's our first 3 pieces. Hardest part of it. On B4 is on the bottom. I'll trim for that. And grab one of our pieces. I'm going to turn it over since there's a wrinkle. And it goes off the paper on each side. I am going to sew now right here. I'm going to repeat the same thing for B5, sew along there. I've got all my pieces trimmed up, and instead of laying all these pieces out, I'm going to start in the center of the block where I've got this piece with the white pointing down, these 2 thinner pieces with the points pointing towards the center, and then these 2 with the purple, my purples down here. So I'm going to put this together so that I have these this center done, and let's see how, yep, the notches line up really nice. So I'm going to get these 2 put on for right now, and I think I will iron towards the center piece. There's my first 2 pieces. Now I'm going to put these end pieces on, and hopefully these notches line up. And it looks like they do on each side. So I'm going to get these sewn on each side, and I think I'll iron these open. Here's my center. Now we want to straighten out this top by putting the 2 singular white or background triangles up here on each side. So I'm just going to start on the right side. Let's see. Yep, it doesn't matter which side you start on. All right. Just going to go back to the right side. And the notches don't match, but the point of the notches lands at the edges. So I'm going to get this one on. I'm going to iron towards the white piece. I'm going to put this one on this side the same way and iron towards that side. Here's my 2 triangles put up here so I have a straight edge there. I pulled out a piece of white paper so you can see this a little better. These pieces are going to fit like this. So if I put these 2 pieces on, then when we put these 2 on, we're going to have to come up here and make a hard right or left. If I put these pieces on, then we just kind of need to scooch it. Just need to make a small turn right here. So I'm going to put these together down here. And I'm just going to center this, and notches are kind of falling off each side. So I'm going to get both of these done, And I'm going to iron towards the little triangle. Put my points on. I did put this side on to see how I was going to do it. I was going to approach this little Y seam. And I want to show you how I did it. I might have to trim. There's a little bit of fabric there, but anyway. We want it to fit like that. So I want to bring my pin up. Oops, I want to go through right there at this point. And I want to bring it up pretty much where all those points meet right there. Yep, that's right at that point on that side. Keep my pin straight. I'm going to hold it in place. I'm going to pin it in place now. Just so I can show you that now I want to sew from down here all the way up to just shy of that point. So right about there, I'm going to stop sewing. I'll probably put a lock stitch in right there. So I'm going to start down here and I'm going to sew all the way up to the point that's just shy of this crossing seam right there. There's my seam. Came up and I just stopped right there. So now I just kind of want to maneuver my piece the best I can to line up over here. So I'm going to try to do my best to make a straight line here. Yeah, it's going to have to work. Now I want to sew right below this seam right here. So right about there, put needle down and then sew up through here. It'll work. I think I got some threads I need to pull out of there, but there we go. I'm going to get that ironed down. There we go. It's not perfect, but it'll do. Okay. So now we have to get these two pieces up on the top. So you can either put these two pieces together, then put it on here, or just work on the way up, all the way up, and I'm just going to do that. I'm going to work all the way up. So I'm going to center my piece. Looks like there's a couple little tails on each side, and I am going to iron towards the top piece. Last is the top portion. Again, I'm just going to center it with little tails hanging off each side. And I'm going to iron towards the top piece. There we go. LS1 Nancee's Fantasy. All right. Phew. Didn't anticipate those. I didn't see those Y seams. Sorry about that. I don't know if I could have done much to change that anyway. There we go. Week 40 is in the books, as I say every week. You probably can tell that I haven't been to my sewing machine or EQ8 in a couple weeks. I did miss a few Y seams before I got to construction. It wasn't that bad. I did modify the one, which one was it? This one. I went back and modified my intro for this one to show you how to make it not be Y seams. But I didn't get to do that, so I just modified my outer borders so they aren't paper piece. Anyway, there we go. It's all done. They turned out really pretty. They turned out really nice. I'm really happy with them. So let's get to populating my photo quilt. Let me know if you're doing your photo quilt. I think it's a blast. I love trying to utilize all of the software that I can that they've given us. And if you're interested in EQ8 or Dear Jane add-on, I do have links down below in the description. So let's put my blocks in. Let's see, B10 Judd's Trophy. Gosh, we are filling this thing in. It's so exciting. D6 Challenge, and there's the D row filled in. E2 Mary May. E12 Mary Ruth's Corset. And left side one, Nancee's Fantasy. Oh my gosh. We are really, look at that center. We will be done with the center by the end of October. And that is just absolutely amazing. I mean, this is a lot of work. Anyway, let me know how it's going for you. I know that I'm doing it at a pretty quick pace. You don't have to do it at this pace, but I do appreciate you following along. And I'm really proud of you wherever you're at in this journey. And I'm proud of myself. This has been a lot of work. Anyway, hit the subscribe button, notification bell. You get notified of my Dear Jane content and all the other content we got here. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.